The rescue the storm hit Tethys, like nature's own fury unleashed. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the reinforced glass of Research Station Delta 7, watching massive waves crash against the support pillars. Lightning split the purple sky, illuminating the churning ocean that stretched endlessly in all directions. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he couldn't tear himself away from the window, as the station's sole marine biologist. Marcus had seen plenty of storms during his 3 years on this remote ocean world. This one felt different. The waves moved with an almost intelligent rhythm, and strange bioluminescent patterns flickered beneath the surface. His instruments detected unusual energy readings from the deep trenches where the native Nerethi were rumored to live. A sharp crack made him spin around. One of the exterior sensor arrays had broken free, its metal frame twisting in the wind before disappearing into the darkness. Marcus cursed under his breath. Without those sensors, he'd be flying blind until the storm passed. The nearest supply ship wasn't due for another 2 months. He was reaching for his emergency repair kit when movement caught his eye. Something small tumbled through the water near the station's lower platform, struggling against the violent current. Marcus squinted through the rain-lashed glass, his heart stopping when he realized what he was seeing. A child. An alien child with pale blue skin and flowing fins, fighting desperately to stay afloat in the deadly waves. Protocol demanded he report any alien contact immediately to the Colonial Authority. The Nerethi were classified as a protected species, and unauthorized interaction carried severe penalties. But watching that small figure disappear beneath another massive wave, Marcus made his choice. He grabbed his diving suit from the emergency locker, his hands shaking as he pulled on the thermal layers. The water temperature was near freezing, and the currents could easily smash him against the station's hull. Every rational part of his mind screamed that this was suicide. The diving chamber flooded with icy seawater as Marcus initiated the emergency launch sequence. His suit's heating elements hummed to life, but he still gasped as the cold hit him. The station's lights faded above as he descended into the storm-tossed ocean. Visibility was nearly zero in the churning water. Marcus activated his suit's sonar, following the ping that indicated where he'd last seen the child. His oxygen gauge showed 20 minutes of air, maybe 25 if he was careful. The currents fought him at every stroke, threatening to drag him away from the station's protective bulk. A flash of bioluminescence caught his attention. The child was there, sinking slowly toward the abyss, tiny hands reaching weakly upward. Marcus kicked hard, his suit's thrusters pushing him through the water. Just as his fingers closed around a delicate wrist, a massive wave slammed into them both. The world spun in a chaos of bubbles and crushing pressure. Marcus's helmet cracked against something hard, and warning lights flashed across his visor. But he held on to the child, pulling the small form against his chest as his suit's emergency ascent system activated. They broke the surface in the station's moon pool with a violent splash. Marcus hauled himself onto the platform, coughing up seawater while the alien child lay motionless in his arms. Her skin had shifted from pale blue to an alarming gray, and delicate gills along her neck fluttered weakly. "Come on," Marcus whispered, checking for a pulse. Her anatomy was different from humans, but he found a steady heartbeat beneath her ribs. "Stay with me." He carried her to his lab, clearing equipment from the examination table with one sweep of his arm. The child's breathing was shallow, and strange patterns of light flickered beneath her translucent skin. Marcus had studied Nerethi physiology from captured footage, but seeing one up close was breathtaking. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way. Her features were delicate and angular, with large eyes that remained closed. Flowing fins extended from her arms and legs, torn in several places from her struggle in the storm. Most striking was her hair, which moved like living water even in the air. Shifting between silver and deep blue, Marcus wrapped her in heated blankets and started a glucose drip, hoping her physiology was similar enough to human baseline. Her temperature was dropping too fast. He activated the lab's warming lamps and began treating her wounds with synthetic tissue gel. As he worked, the child stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises like captured starlight. She looked up at Marcus with a mixture of fear and curiosity, her mouth opening to reveal small, pearl-like teeth. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "You're safe now." The child studied his face intently, then reached up with one delicate hand to touch his cheek. Her fingers were webbed and incredibly soft, with tiny scales that shimmered in the lab's light. When she spoke, her voice was like music made of ocean waves, though Marcus couldn't understand her words. Her meaning was clear. She was thanking him. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the warm circle of light in his lab, Marcus felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. This wasn't just first contact with an alien species. This was the moment his life changed forever. The child smiled at him, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in what seemed like contentment. Marcus smiled back, unaware that somewhere in the depths below, a desperate mother was beginning her search for her missing daughter. First contact, the child slept fitfully through the night, her bioluminescent patterns dimming and brightening like a living constellation. Marcus remained at her bedside, monitoring her vital signs and marveling at the delicate beauty of her alien features. He'd named her Kes in his mind after the Terran word for blessing, because that's what this felt like despite the danger. When morning came, the storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie calm. Kes stirred as sunlight filtered through the lab's windows, her large eyes opening to fix on Marcus with renewed alertness. She tried to sit up, wincing as her injured fins protested the movement. "Easy," Marcus murmured, gently helping her settle back against the pillows. "Your injuries need more time to heal." Kes tilted her head at the sound of his voice, her expression intensely curious. She reached toward him again, her fingertips glowing softly as they brushed his hand. Suddenly, images flashed through Marcus's mind, fragmented and dreamlike but unmistakably real. He saw vast underwater cities carved from living coral, their spires reaching toward the surface like frozen music. Schools of luminescent creatures danced through the water between towering kelp forests. And everywhere, the Narathi moved with fluid grace, their bodies perfectly adapted to their aquatic world. Kes withdrew her hand, leaving Marcus gasping at the intensity of the mental contact. She studied his shocked expression with what looked like satisfaction, then began to speak in her melodic language. Though he still couldn't understand the words, the emotions came through clearly in the echoes of their mental link. She was trying to tell him about her family, her home in the deep trenches. Most importantly, she was trying to explain that her mother would be searching for her as if summoned by the thought. The lab's proximity alarms began to chime. Something large was approaching the station from below, rising through the water with purposeful determination. Marcus checked his sensors, his breath catching at the readings. Whatever was coming up from the depths was massive and moving fast. Kes heard the alarms and became agitated, her patterns flashing in rapid sequences. She struggled to get up from the examination table despite her injuries, calling out in her musical voice. The urgency in her tone made Marcus's pulse race. "Your mother?" he asked, though he knew she couldn't understand him. Kes nodded vigorously, then pointed toward the moon pool. Her meaning was clear. Her mother was coming, and she needed to get to the water. Marcus hesitated for only a moment. Every protocol he'd ever learned told him to secure the alien child and contact the authorities. But looking into Kes's starlight eyes, seeing the desperate hope there, he made his choice again. He carried Kes to the moon pool, her weight almost nothing in his arms. As they approached the platform, the water began to glow with an otherworldly light. Something was rising from the depths, creating patterns of bioluminescence that made the ocean itself seem alive. Then she emerged from the water, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. Kes's mother was stunning beyond anything he could have imagined. She rose from the moon pool with fluid grace, water streaming from her lithe form as she moved with the natural elegance of a creature born to the sea. Her skin was a deeper blue than her daughter's, with flowing patterns of silver that caught the light like living jewelry. She was tall for her species, nearly matching Marcus's height, with a figure that was both powerful and graceful. Her hair flowed around her shoulders like liquid mercury, and her eyes held the wisdom of deep waters. Most striking were her fins, which extended from her arms and legs in magnificent displays of translucent beauty. The moment she saw Kess, her expression transformed from worry to overwhelming relief. She spoke rapidly in the Narathi language, her voice carrying harmonies that made Marcus's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Kess responded just as quickly, and though Marcus couldn't understand their words, he could feel the love between mother and daughter. The woman's attention turned to Marcus, and he found himself pinned by her gaze. Her eyes were the color of deep ocean, shifting between blue and green like tide pools in sunlight. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air between them seemed charged with electricity. Recognition sparking across species lines, she spoke to him then, her voice softer than when she'd been talking to Kess. The mental contact came more gently this time, images and emotions flowing between them like a careful conversation. He saw her terror when she'd realized Kess was missing, her frantic search through the storm-tossed waters. He felt her gratitude when she understood that he had saved her daughter's life. And beneath it all, there was something else. A spark of attraction that surprised them both. Marcus cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how long they'd been staring at each other. "She's healing well," he said, gesturing to Kess. The wounds weren't as bad as they looked. The woman tilted her head, studying his lips as he spoke. Then she pressed her fingertips to her throat and spoke again, this time in accented but understandable English. "I am Zara," she said, her voice like music even in his language. "My daughter. You saved her life." Marcus felt his heart skip at the sound of his name in her melodic accent. "She's a brave kid. Fought hard to stay alive." Zara moved closer, water still dripping from her fins, as she knelt beside the platform where Kess lay. Her proximity made Marcus intensely aware of the graceful curves of her body, the way her bioluminescent patterns pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. "My people," Zara said carefully, "we are taught to fear the surface dwellers. But you..." She looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. "You are different." Their eyes met again, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about saving an alien child anymore. This was the beginning of something he couldn't name, something that made his pulse race and his thoughts scatter like startled fish. Kess, recovered enough to notice the tension between her mother and her rescuer, made a sound that might have been laughter. She spoke rapidly to Zara in their language, gesturing between them with obvious delight. Zara's cheeks darkened with what looked like a blush, her patterns flashing in embarrassed spirals. Whatever Kess had said, it had struck close to home. Marcus found himself smiling despite the danger of the situation. What did she say? Zara's eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. "My daughter," she said, "thinks you have kind eyes." But the way she looked at him suggested that Kess wasn't the only one who'd noticed. Unlikely Alliance 3 days passed in a delicate balance of wonder and growing tension. Zara remained near the station, staying in the deeper waters during the day and visiting the moon pool each evening to check on Kess's recovery. Marcus found himself looking forward to these visits with an intensity that surprised him. Each night, their conversations grew longer and deeper. Zara's English improved rapidly. She shared stories of her underwater civilization while Marcus told her about the stars and distant worlds. They discovered a shared love of ancient music, the way light played on water. In the peaceful moments just before dawn, Kess recovered quickly under her mother's care and Marcus's medical attention. The young Narathi seemed fascinated by human technology and delighted in playing translator between the two adults, though Marcus suspected she was embellishing their words to encourage their obvious attraction. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Marcus was running routine diagnostics when his long-range scanners detected an incoming ship. His blood ran cold as he recognized the signature, a corporate authority vessel, the kind used for specimen collection and interrogation. Someone had detected the energy signatures from his unauthorized contact. He found Zara and Kess in the moon pool, the mother teaching her daughter a complex swimming pattern that looked like underwater dancing. The joy on their faces made his heart ache with what he had to tell them. "Zara," he called softly. "We have a problem." She emerged from the water immediately, reading the urgency in his voice. Water streamed from her skin in silver rivulets as she moved to the platform's edge, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to defensive configurations. "What is wrong?" she asked, though her posture suggested she already knew. Marcus activated his portable display, showing her the approaching ship's trajectory. "Corporate authority. They're coming for Kess. Probably detected our interactions somehow. They'll be here in 6 hours." Zara's patterns flared bright with anger, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the water around them vibrate. "They would take my daughter? Study her like a specimen." "That's exactly what they'd do," Marcus said grimly. "I should have been more careful with the sensor dampeners." Kess had been listening from the water, her large eyes wide with fear. She swam to her mother's side, speaking rapidly in the Nerethi language. Zara's expression grew fiercer with each word. "Kess says she will not go with them," Zara translated. "She says she would rather die free in the deep waters." Marcus felt something break inside his chest. He looked at this beautiful woman and her brave daughter, knowing that the approaching ship would tear their family apart in the name of science and progress. The decision formed in his mind without conscious thought. "Then we don't let them take her," he said quietly. Zara stared at him in surprise. "You would defy your own kind for us." "They're not my kind," Marcus replied, with more conviction than he'd ever felt. "My kind doesn't steal children from their parents." Something shifted in Zara's expression, a warmth that made her patterns pulse in gentle waves. She reached up from the water, her hand finding his where it rested on the platform's edge. Her touch sent electricity through his skin. "Then we must hide," she said. "But where?" "They will scan every part of this station," Marcus thought quickly, his mind racing through possibilities. The station had escape pods, but those would be tracked immediately. The underwater maintenance tunnels were too shallow to hide a Nerethi for long. Then he remembered the abandoned research facility in the deep trench, the one that had been sealed after the mining accident 5 years ago. "I know a place," he said. "But we'll have to move now, and we'll have to go deep." Zara nodded without hesitation. "How deep?" "Deeper than any human has gone before," Marcus admitted. "I'll need your help to survive it." The trust that passed between them in that moment felt more intimate than any kiss. Zara squeezed his hand gently, her skin warm despite its aquatic nature. "We go together," she said simply. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Marcus gathered emergency supplies, medical equipment, and portable life support systems while Zara explained the situation to Kess. The young Nerethi took the news with the kind of brave acceptance that broke Marcus's heart. As the corporate ship grew larger on his screens, Marcus made one final decision. He activated the station's emergency beacon, broadcasting a distress signal that would cover their escape. To anyone monitoring, it would look like a catastrophic system failure had killed everyone aboard. They descended through the moon pool together, Marcus in his deep-water survival suit, and the 2 Nerethi swimming alongside him. Zara had produced a breathing apparatus from somewhere, a beautiful piece of biotechnology that interfaced directly with his suit to provide unlimited air from the water around them. The descent took hours, diving deeper than any human had ever gone. Marcus watched his depth gauge climb past every safety limit he'd ever learned, trusting completely in Zara's guidance. She moved through the water like liquid poetry, her daughter matching her grace stroke for stroke. At 3,000 meters, they reached the abandoned facility. The structure was larger than Marcus had expected, built into the trench wall like a metal parasite. Emergency power still flickered in some sections, casting eerie shadows through the flooded corridors. Zara explored the facility with careful efficiency, while Marcus set up their temporary base in what had been the main laboratory. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was hiding in a place where humans had once studied the ocean's secrets, now dependent on those same mysteries for survival as night fell in the depths above them. Kess curled up to sleep in a section where the facility's hull had been breached, allowing water to flow freely. She seemed completely at home in the flooded environment, her patterns dimming to soft pulses as she drifted off. Zara found Marcus sitting by the viewport, watching the strange creatures of the deep drift past in the facility's lights. She settled beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Your people will think you are dead," she said softly. Maybe that's for the best, Marcus replied. I was just existing up there anyway. This feels like living. Zara turned to study his face, her patterns shifting to colors he'd never seen before. Deeper blues and purples that seemed to echo the emotions in her eyes. You gave up everything for us. I gave up nothing that mattered, he said, meeting her gaze, and I gained everything that does. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and the weight of all they'd shared. When Zara leaned closer, Marcus felt his breath catch. Her lips were soft and warm, tasting of ocean salt and something indefinably sweet. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative to beings from different worlds, discovering that some things transcended species. Then Zara's arms came up around his neck, and Marcus lost himself in the wonder of her touch. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Zara's patterns pulsed in rapid, beautiful sequences, and Marcus realized he was learning to read her emotions in the language of living light. Is this wise? She whispered. Marcus smiled, brushing a strand of liquid silver hair from her face. Probably not. But I've never felt anything more right in my life. Above them, the corporate ship searched an empty station, finding only false readings and fabricated evidence. Below, in the safety of the deep, 3 hearts that shouldn't have been able to beat in harmony discovered that love was the most universal force of all. Part 4. Forbidden Feelings. Forbidden feelings, the days in the hidden facility, took on a strange, dreamlike quality. Marcus modified the life support systems to accommodate both air-breathing and water-breathing inhabitants, creating a unique environment where he and Zara could exist together comfortably. Kes adapted to their new home with the resilience of youth, turning the flooded corridors into her personal playground. Marcus found himself falling into a routine that felt more natural than anything in his previous life. Mornings were spent maintaining their equipment and monitoring for corporate ships. Afternoons belonged to Kes, who had appointed herself as his teacher in Narathi, culture, and language. Evenings were for Zara. It was during one of these evening conversations that the barriers between them finally crumbled completely. They sat in the facility's observation dome, a transparent hemisphere that offered a 360-degree view of the ocean depths. Bioluminescent creatures drifted past like living stars, their light painting shifting patterns across their faces. Tell me about your world before, Zara said softly. Before the station? Before the ocean? What was Marcus like when he lived among the stars? Marcus considered the question, watching a school of luminescent fish spiral through the water above them. Lonely, he admitted. I spent so much time studying life that I forgot how to live it. My work was everything, and everything felt empty. Aura moved closer, her shoulder brushing his. The contact sent warmth spreading through his chest. And now I understand why people write poetry about love, he said, turning to meet her eyes. I used to think it was biological programming, chemical reactions designed to encourage reproduction. I never understood that it was really about finding the other half of your soul. Zara's patterns shifted to soft golds and silvers. Colors he'd learned meant deep affection. In my language, we have a word for this feeling. Thalassos. It means the moment when 2 currents join to become one river. The space between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. Marcus reached up to touch her face, marveling at the way her bioluminescent patterns responded to his caress. Brightening and swirling like captured starlight, Thalassos, he repeated, the alien word feeling perfect on his lips. Zara's eyes fluttered closed at his touch. When she opened them again, they held depths that made the ocean seem shallow. My people believe that the sea chooses our hearts for us, she whispered. That the tides carry us to those we are meant to love. Then the tides carried me to you, Marcus said, his thumb tracing the delicate line of her cheekbone. When their lips met this time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. Zara's arms wound around his neck, and Marcus pulled her closer, marveling at the perfect way she fit against him. Her skin was silk beneath his hands, warm and alive with patterns of light that pulsed in rhythm with their racing hearts. The kiss deepened, becoming something that transcended the physical. Through their connection, Marcus felt the ocean of Zara's emotions, vast and deep, and completely focused on him. He shared his own feelings in return, the wonder and gratitude and fierce protectiveness that had been growing in his heart. They broke apart only when breathing became necessary. Foreheads pressed together as they shared the same air. Zara's patterns had shifted to deep crimsons and purples, colors that spoke of desire and complete trust. "I have never felt this way about a surface dweller," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "In my culture, we are taught that your kind and mine are too different to truly understand each other." Marcus smiled, his hands tangling in the living silk of her hair. "Your culture never met you," he said. "You're not like anyone else in any species," she laughed, the sound like water over stones, and pulled him down for another kiss. This one was hungrier, more urgent, speaking to the days of growing tension between them. Marcus felt himself drowning in the sensation, in the impossible reality of holding this magnificent woman in his arms, when Zara's hands began to explore the fastenings of his suit. Marcus caught them gently. "Are you sure?" he asked, searching her face for any sign of doubt. Her answer was to press her palms against his chest, her touch sending patterns of warm light across his skin. The bioluminescence wasn't just beautiful. It was intimate, a visual manifestation of her trust and desire. "I am sure of you," she said. "I am sure of us." They made love slowly, carefully, mapping the geography of two worlds coming together. Every touch was a discovery, every kiss a small miracle. Marcus had never imagined that intimacy could be so complete, so transcendent. When Zara's patterns flared bright in the moment of their joining, the entire observation dome filled with shifting light, as if the ocean itself was celebrating their union. Afterward, they lay entwined in the soft glow of the deep-sea creatures outside, Zara's head on Marcus's chest as her patterns gradually settled into the gentle pulses that meant contentment. Her hair flowed around them both like liquid silver, still moving even in the still air. "What happens when this hiding is over?" she asked softly. Marcus stroked her back, feeling the delicate ridges of her spine, the slight texture of scales along her shoulders. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't go back to the life I had before. Even if it means leaving your world behind, your people, your career, everything you worked for." Marcus considered this, thinking of his sterile apartment on the orbital station, his reports that no one read, his research into creatures he'd never truly understood. Then he looked down at this incredible woman in his arms, thought of brave little Kess sleeping peacefully in the next chamber, and felt a certainty that settled in his bones. "You are my world now," he said simply. "You and Kess. Everything else is just details." Zara's patterns flared bright with joy before settling into deeper, richer colors. "Then perhaps," she said, pressing a kiss to his chest, "it is time for you to meet my people. To see the cities below and learn what it truly means to be part of the ocean." The thought should have terrified him. Marcus knew enough about Narrow-Thea society to understand that humans were viewed with suspicion at best. But lying here with Zara's warmth against him, listening to her heart beat in rhythm with the distant songs of whales, he felt only excitement. "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like to see your world through your eyes." Outside the observation dome, the ocean depths held secrets that had existed since before humans dreamed of touching the stars. Soon Marcus would join those secrets, diving deeper than any of his species had gone before, not as a researcher or observer, but as something entirely new, a human who had learned to breathe underwater by drowning himself in love.